Hi, my name's Sheehan and today I'd like to talk about Flashman by George McDonald Fraser. I'd like to go through this novel exploring how the plot's put together in terms of its structure, as well as the themes that crop up in this book. Now, Flashman, of course, is the first of a series of novels about the exploits of Harry Flashman, this Victorian soldier, and also, of course, a coward, a liar, a womanizer, a general scoundrel and rogue. But despite this, he often comes out on top. He seems to be able to pull the wool over people's eyes about what he really is like. And we get to know a bit of the backstory of Flashman in this first book. Now, Flashman, of course, is the bully out of Tom Brown's school days, and George McDonald Fraser has taken this character from there and really fleshed him out into this this Victorian anti-hero. Now, just a quick word about this book. I mean, Flashman was published in 1969. I suspect by the standards of the day it was written, but certainly by now, it's incredibly unpolitically correct. It's you know, it will cause offence to many people. So just bear that in mind if you haven't read this. There's a lot of racial slurs in there. There's a lot of misogyny, a lot of talk of rape and actual committing rape as well. All shot through with this irreverent humour, and Flashman himself has a general disregard for people. So that's just a little proviso, just in case you know you might be offended by such things. And I suspect in today's climate, a book like Flashman might well be censured or even cancelled. Now, if you can put those things aside, it's an incredibly funny book. Now, Flashman, if you describe the plot, I guess you'd say it's in 3 acts with a coda at the end. And also an explanatory note at the beginning, how these so-called Flashman papers, these autobiographical writings of this Victorian adventurous soldier, came into the possession of the editor or the author. Then the first part of the book, Act 1, is about Flashman being expelled from rugby school for being drunk. He goes back to his father with his tail between his legs, and he decides he's going to join the army. Flashman also seduces his father's mistress and then tries to rape her as well. And he's forced to marry this girl called Elspeth. He seems to have a real soft spot for his wife, as we find out near the end of the book. But then he is sent to India. Act 2 really is about Flashman being sent from India into Afghanistan, and it's all about the Anglo-Afghanistan war at the time. And Flashman is this kind of messenger from the top brass of the British Army to the leaders of the Afghan forces. Particularly this guy called Akbar Khan. And it's here that Flashman is involved with various scrapes and adventures, killings and fighting, and he meets his arch nemesis Gul Shah. And Flashman angers Gul Shah because he rapes Gul Shah's servant girl, who Gul Shah, well, in lust with himself, it seems. So he's offended Gul Shah, as well as his servant girl, of course. And Flashman's imprisoned, but then he's saved by Akbar Khan, the leader of the Afghanistan army, who wants to take control of Afghanistan for himself. He seems to quite like Flashman. Then the third act is about the British Army withdrawing from Kabul and out of Afghanistan altogether. And this is based on the historical military blunder of this retreat. It was a terrible stain on the record of the British military, and Flashman's caught up in this, and from this disastrous march he's captured again with his fellow soldier Hudson. They're imprisoned. Gul Shah, of course, is there again to wreak his revenge on Flashman, but once again, largely because of Hudson, his colleague, Gul Shah is killed and they escape, and eventually they're caught up in this siege, and they're protecting this fort, and again it's Hudson who deserves the credit for repelling the Afghan forces, but of course Flashman is left alive. He's the only soldier left alive, and he wakes up in hospital and he's fated as a war hero, even though he's been a complete coward during this. And then at the end we have a coda where he's back home with Elspeth, his wife, who he suspects has been playing around, let's say, with other soldiers while he's been away, and he's something of a celebrity, meeting the Duke of Wellington and the Queen. Now, Flashman is a hugely entertaining read, quite an educational read as well, actually, because I did not know much about the British involvement in Afghanistan in Victorian times. So it's inspired me to do a bit of background reading around it. It's just a very funny story. Flashman is, I wouldn't say he's a lovable character, but he certainly has his charm, and he's very funny, and some of the lines he comes up with are hilarious. It is problematic, there are, as I've mentioned, there's rape, he rapes a couple of women, which is very difficult to take, particularly in today's climate. I guess it would have been possibly even in the 60s as well when it was written, but particularly now. And he uses the N-word a lot to describe the natives of Afghanistan and India. So if you're likely to be offended by that kind of thing, I'd stay clear of this book. But despite these considerations, it's definitely a very entertaining read, if you can put those things to one side. And I suppose some of the themes that crop up in this book include, the obvious one of war and the Anglo-Afghanistan war. Much of it's focused, of course, on Flashman, who is the archetypal anti-hero. He's just so driven by lust and dishonesty and cowardice, but he is the one who receives the praise for most of these exploits. A lot about the Victorian class system, and a lot about military incompetence as well. I understand George McDonald Fraser served in the army, so I'm sure he would have been very knowledgeable about such things. There's a lot about kind of English public schools and that kind of thing as well. So yeah, Flashman, a really funny and entertaining read. But if you're easily offended, stay clear. Thanks for watching. It's just a brief slideshow after this, going through the structure and the themes. Bye.